Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my insane boss demanded that I work for free and insisted that I give up my rights and do whatever he says. I taught him a lesson he will never forget. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. The title story starts like this. I used to work at a small restaurant a few months back when I had moved out of my house and needed to earn money so I don't burn through my savings. I had to drop out of my college because of moving out and other family situations, so this was the best job I could get. It was easy and busy and I liked it there. For a few days, everything went fairly well. But then after those few days, the reality started coming out. Our boss began making many unreasonable and downright unethical demands. He told us to come in on our days off, and it was especially tough for me because I was trying to sort my college situation out, but I couldn't say no because I needed this job. One of my coworkers also noticed that our boss was not paying us the right amount. He was supposed to follow the labor laws and pay us minimum wage, but he was paying us less. When we confronted him about it, our boss brushed it off and said that he would make it up later. However, he never did, and my coworker quit shortly after. Things got worse from there. Our boss started cutting corners on safety measures, and he told us to ignore the expiration dates on food and to use old ingredients. Another one of my coworkers spoke up about this, and he fired her in a few weeks, so I kept quiet even though I hated to do that. On top of everything else, our boss also became increasingly unreasonable about breaks and shift changes. He told us we can only take short breaks, even though the law says that we are entitled to longer ones. He would keep track of our breaks and yell at us if we dared to take longer breaks. He once shouted so loudly at a new employee that she started crying and quit on the spot. He also tried to investigate about my family situation, even though that was not something that he needed to know for my job position, and when I refused, he made me do extra things just out of spite. Sometimes he even denied us breaks altogether, saying there was too much work to be done even though we never had a huge crowd of customers. And if someone would say that there were no customers, he would make that person run some stupid errand for him or do a job that was not theirs, like cleaning his desk or arranging files for him. And when it came to changing shifts, it was just a nightmare. He expected us to be available at his beck and call like we were his slaves, regardless of our personal schedules or commitments. He changed our shifts without notice, and if we couldn't make it, he got angry and threatened to cut our hours. Then I tried to reason with him, even though I was very scared, explaining that we had lives outside of work and that we needed time to rest and recharge. But he didn't listen. He said we should be grateful to have a job and that we should do whatever it takes to keep it. Some people who were in college couldn't even get time off for exams. It was not even that they were asking to be paid for those missed days or something, but our boss would threaten to straight up fire them. So most of them only worked between exams and quit during the exam season. One of the older coworkers who recently quit after saving up enough of an amount told me that this would happen every year, so the boss started hiring more college dropouts or people who were in severely bad financial situations so they would not quit. Things took a turn for the absolute worst when he called a staff meeting one day. He gathered us all in the cramped break room and told us that from now on, we were expected to work unpaid overtime. He said we each had to put in at least 10 extra hours every week without any extra pay. His reason? He claimed the restaurant was struggling financially and that we needed to make sacrifices to keep it afloat. But it didn't sit right with me. I knew we were already working hard, and now he wanted even more from us without offering anything in return. Well, it was not shocking given his previous actions, but it still made us all so angry. I spoke up along with a few others, saying how it was not fair, but our boss just brushed us off again, saying it was either this or we could find jobs elsewhere. He knew we were desperate and that we couldn't afford to lose our jobs, so he used that against us. But I could not do what he was asking. My mental and emotional health was already in shambles, and putting in so much extra work was just not possible for me. So I finally gathered the courage to refuse to work unpaid overtime. I stood my ground, citing labor laws and explaining that what he was asking for was illegal. But instead of understanding or respecting my stance, he flew into a rage. He started yelling and berating me in front of everyone, and even went so far as to accuse me of being selfish and said that if I was not willing to break the law for the sake of the restaurant, then I didn't deserve to have a job. In the days following our conversation, it became apparent that he was not willing to let my refusal to work unpaid overtime slide. He started scrutinizing my work with a magnifying glass and started looking for any small mistake to use against me. And sure enough, it didn't take long for him to find fault. He wrote me up for minor issues that he had never cared about before, like forgetting to refill the salt shakers or leaving a smudge on a table. It wasn't clear whether he was trying to find a reason to get rid of me or was trying to simply torture me because he knew I wouldn't quit. However, as days passed and his hostility towards me became more apparent, I knew that he was tormenting me because he thought I was helpless. Which I was very much so, but everything has a limit. So then I decided to take action. I reached out to my fellow co-workers who had also been affected by our boss's unfair practices. Together, we started documenting everything from the unpaid overtime demands to the safety violations and the unreasonable working conditions. And yes, most of us were desperate for money and a job, but this was too much even for desperate people like us. We gathered evidence, took notes and photos whenever possible. We also began to keep track of our conversations with him, recording instances where he had threatened or intimidated us. After one more week, I was fired. He cited those same minor issues he'd been nitpicking at as the reason for my termination, but I knew the truth. It was clear he had an idea of what I was doing and he just wanted to silence me. But by then, I had enough evidence to take them straight to the labor board. I laid out everything, the unpaid overtime, the safety violations and the intimidation tactics. The investigation that followed uncovered that not only had our boss been forcing us to work without pay, but he also had been withholding taxes from our paychecks and pocketing the money for himself. And he also had been secretly skimming a percentage from our paychecks each week under the guise of admin fee. On top of all of that, the restaurant was in violation of numerous health codes, putting both employees and customers at risk. In the end, our boss was not only charged with wage theft but also with tax evasion and multiple health code violations, which made the authorities revoke his business license. In civil court, my coworkers and I pursued legal action against him. We sought restitution for the wages he had unlawfully withheld from us, as well as damages for the hardships we had endured. After a long legal battle, the court ruled in our favor. We were awarded a substantial judgment for back pay and damages. With the financial burden of the judgment looming over him and the loss of his license, our boss was forced to close the restaurant permanently. And here, Ripe Stars, I would say that's kind of a happy ending for OP and the other co-workers, even though they don't have a job anymore, but at least this awful boss got his comeuppance. And to be honest, I would probably prefer not having a job instead of having a job like that. That was clear exploitation and nobody should be working in conditions like that. Either way, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So my wife has a stuffed animal that she has had since she was born. We will call it Teddy, even though it's a dog. Anyway, she loves that damn stuffed animal. It is, was her favorite thing. Her grandma, who passed away when my wife was 10, gave it to her and it's kind of been her security blanket throughout her entire life. When my wife's mother would get physical or abusive, she would clutch the thing and cry. She told me on more than one occasion that her mother tried to throw it away as she got older. She had to dig through the trash and save it and hid it from her mother until she was away at college. At one point when she was younger, her mother threw it in the dryer and sinked the hair and laughed when she gave it back to her. Obviously, her mother was not a nice person, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to tell you the connection she has with Teddy. Whenever she's been sick or had an injury or surgery, Teddy has been in bed with her, comforting her. Anyway, a few weeks ago my wife found out that she was pregnant. We haven't told anyone yet, hence the throwaway account, and have been trying to keep my wife healthy throughout the flu season. She works as a teacher, so we've been trying really hard to be sanitary. Long story short, Teddy was filthy, just absolutely disgusting after years of cuddling, sweat, tears, drool, and the occasional trash dive. I'd been after her for years to wash the thing, but she was against it because of the dryer incident. I was finally able to convince her last night that it was time to wash it for health's sake. And well, we washed it on delicate and then put it on tumble dry. The tag was so faded and frayed out you couldn't read the washing instructions. However, our dryer is a piece of crap and Teddy got caught somehow and was ripped apart inside the dryer beyond repair. My wife now is absolutely devastated and I feel so ridiculously guilty. I kept apologizing and she kept crying. She took the day off work today partly because she is having bad cramps from the pregnancy, partly from the sadness of losing the favorite thing from her childhood, and of course she was up in bed this morning crying because she was sick and also because she didn't have Teddy there to be with her. I feel like I effed up something fierce here, Reddit. How do I fix this? Is there a way to fix this? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this. Is OP the a-hole here or not? Anyway, there is an update to the story and it reads like this. I had no idea that these things could be fixed so easily. Users have been PMing me Etsy links, stuffed animal hospitals and seamstresses that can fix these things. I'm gonna gather the remains of Teddy tonight and send a photo to one of these people, one of which is in the same state as we are. Hopefully they'll be able to fix Teddy and possibly make him look like he did even before her mom melted him in the dryer the first round. If that's not an option, then I'm gonna do what someone in the comments suggested and use Teddy's remains to make a few more stuffed things for the future baby. Thanks for the help. Update to the story, a friend of her family is a professional seamstress and said she could get Teddy back right as rain. I would have taken any one of the seriously 10+ Redditors that said they would do it for free, but the convenience of the friend is too good to pass up. She also said she would do it for free. So not only should Teddy get fixed, he should be good and we don't have to worry about him being lost through shipping or something like that. The wife has hope, but it is tempered at the moment. I'm excited to see how it turns out. I showed her this thread and all the support that came with it and she was moved to tears. If the seamstress doesn't get it all together, then she will entertain the Build-A-Bear idea. Then a user in the comments said, I can solve this, sir. I'm a subject matter expert on stuffed animals. This is a common problem and it can be completely fixed. First, let me clarify a common misconception. Your wife's Teddy was special to her because of the love and attention she had put into it over the many decades. This love and attention gave her daddy what we call a stuffed animal spirit. These stuffed animal spirits inhabit the body of the animal. When you destroyed the physical bear, the spirit started floating around a bit lost. And by the way, ripe stars, this wholesome story starts to remind me a little bit of the movie/book Pet Sematary, but I hope it won't go in that direction. Anyway, the good news is that their spirits can easily transfer into a new body. You will need to get a new body for the spirit as others have suggested. You can go to Build-A-Bear or buy a similar one or even attempt to repair it. Once you get the new body, you will have to transfer the spirit back into the body. The process is simple. Just start acknowledging the new body as Teddy and usually within moments it'll be back. You may notice some slight disorientation at first, but stuffed animal spirits are quite resilient. I would refrain from showing it a mirror for a few hours and give it some time to sit in familiar surroundings. Again, they are quite resilient and within a few hours you can resume normal activities. It's important that you accept this as fact and follow these instructions. Just have decades of love and attention created Teddy, your faith will bring it back. Comment number 2, what is salvageable? Did Teddy have button eyes, any intact fabric? Find someone who sews to sew you a new Teddy using parts of old Teddy. Use the same eyes if you can. Maybe you can use some of the old fabric for feet or a tail or something. It won't bring Teddy back, but at least she'll have the memories. Update number 2, Teddy lives! Teddy is patched up and he is clean. Seriously, thank you everyone that offered to help out. The fact that so many anonymous people on the internet were that invested in helping out my pregnant wife was amazing. She got him back over the weekend from her family friend and he looks great. We also got her on some new prenatal vitamins that don't have iron in them, so she is feeling less sick all the time, so that's good too. I'm taking half a day to take my wife to the doctor for our first ultrasound later today. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments whether you enjoy these more wholesome stories, because I think it's a nice little bit of variety, because I don't do these stories that often. The next one is titled, Stupid Karen Gets What She Deserves. So I work at a rather famous home supply and maintenance store. I won't say the name just in case, but to set the scene, a month or so ago, Karen and her husband came in to buy an appliance. They happened to come on a very busy day and we only had 2 people in appliances, one of whom was going on her lunch. Well, apparently Karen was not happy that a couple of men who had already been waiting were served ahead of her and pitched a tantrum. Even going so far as to go up to the girl leaving for her lunch, who was no longer in uniform, was talking to another employee and berating her for ignoring her. The girl told her multiple times that she was not on the clock and Karen informed her it didn't matter, she would help her right then. The girl told her she could wait or take her business elsewhere and went about her business. This apparently pissed off Karen and her husband as he proceeded to call customer service. I happened to be covering their desk, and then began yelling at me that he was a GD man, whatever that means, I'm not exactly sure, and that if we were gonna serve other men before his wife, we would effing serve him first. I laughed at him and said that's not how things work and hung up the phone. We don't take abuse at my store, I definitely refuse to, and the managers generally support us in that. The funny part of all of this? Our town has a local Facebook page where you can post reviews and events, and Karen decided to make a massive post about what happened, only she actually didn't. She's twisted it so that it seemed that she had been purposely ignored. She hadn't, she just didn't want to wait in line. Denied service, she wasn't, she had confronted and cursed out a teenage employee who was off the clock, and she and her husband had been verbally abused by every employee in the store. They had spoken to the girl and to me, and neither of us abused them, we were both abused ourselves. Of course, at first, she got sympathy from a lot of women of the same mentality. A lot of "no one wants to work anymore" comments. However, one of our cashiers happened to be told about it and then showed me. And yes, I am petty. I'll admit it beforehand, but I made a fake Facebook account. I don't do social media much beyond lurking on Reddit, and I joined the town's page. Needless to say, I first commented in explicit detail everything that actually happened, including direct quotes from the other girl. Then, to sink the F you Karen knife a little deeper, I copied my post and replied to every comment on her post. This is not actually what happened. What happened was, insert comment here. Within moments, the entire town turned on her. Hundreds of comments calling her a liar and a horrible person. The next morning? Well, the post was gone and she's never returned to our store. Was I a bit of a Karen myself? Maybe. But when it comes to my fellow employees, I tend to fight petty fire with petty fire. And thanks to this situation and several more since then, I've become the go-to for dealing with Karens and rude customers when my coworkers cannot get a hold of a manager. No way this can end badly, right? And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I come from a military family. My dad was in the Navy and my grandfather was in the Army. Many of my cousins ended up going into branches of the military as well. It was no surprise to anyone when I announced that I wanted to fight for our country as well, and I was heavily encouraged to do so. I served for 16 years before returning home to live with my husband and our son permanently, and I don't regret a single thing about it. I now work with a non-profit program that tries to keep veterans off the streets, which is a difficult undertaking but incredibly rewarding. I am one of the lucky few who has a home and family and little to no lasting issues from being in the army, so I feel like I have a duty to help those less fortunate than me. My son Tony was born with a genetic condition that caused him to lose his sight completely by the time he turned 4, and it was definitely difficult to navigate. My husband had to deal with most of it since I was on active duty at the time and could only support him from a distance. He just turned 10 this year and he's never really known a different life, so he copes remarkably well. He uses a white cane when he goes out and he maneuvers through the world with ease, which is pretty impressive to watch. He ended up getting a guide dog named Athena about a year ago, and it was completely covered by insurance. Amazingly, that was a real game changer when it came to getting him out of the house and helping him to feel comfortable when it came to navigating the world. There are a lot of people who either have an issue with service animals or seem to think it's okay to touch an animal without getting express permission, and my son does not always recognize when someone is close to Athena until it is too late. I've seen more than one person get hit by his cane because they stopped to pet her, and it feels like instant karma every single time. Tony does not let rude individuals get to him, since he knows there are always gonna be idiots in the universe and all you can do is be better than them. Tony and I love to go see movies together. It's something we started doing years back, and now we try to go to one every 2 months just to have an excuse to spend time together. He loves action films and comedies like many boys his age, and I often take notes during the film of important visual information so that we can discuss it later. It's usually things like what the main character looks like or if there was any important info shown but not mentioned through dialogue, since it's hard to get the best accessibility in a public theater compared to watching a movie at home. A week ago, we decided to go see a new movie that had been released earlier in the month. We prefer to see them a little after they are released so the theater is less crowded, and we hopped in the car and made our way over. We found a parking spot and began to make our way to the ticket counter when a woman stepped into our path. She knelt down to pet Athena and I stood stunned for a moment, unsure of what to do. Karen, what a cute dog you have. Me, well, thank you, but we would prefer if you didn't do that. Karen, what's their name? Me, her name is Athena. Tony ended up hitting her in the leg with his cane because he did not know that she was there and was attempting to get a read on his surroundings. Karen, careful with that thing. You shouldn't let your kid have something like that. Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were right there. This cane helps me to know where any obstacles are. Karen, sure it does. You need to leave that in your car though. Me, no, he needs that to help him walk around so he'll not be leaving it in the car. I took my son by the arm and moved forward around the woman and she let us pass by her. I was a bit taken aback by her attitude, but Tony just shrugged and laughed it off, saying it was another good story he could tell his friends when he went back to school on Monday. We got our tickets, bought some snacks and made our way into the theater, where we picked seats right near the middle. There were other people in the theater, but not so many that people couldn't be spaced out, so we didn't have anyone directly near us, which was nice. Athena was stretched out on the floor in front of our seats and she prepared herself for 2 hours of rest while we enjoyed our movie. Right after the film started, I saw a woman enter and take a seat right in front of us. I thought it was odd, but didn't think too much of it. It was about 10 minutes later that Tony nudged me and whispered in my ear that someone in front of us was talking, and when I focused I noticed that the woman directly in front was making cooing noises and had her hand between the seats in an attempt to pet Athena. It was clearly the rude lady from earlier and I felt uncomfortable with the fact that she had followed us. Tony was clearly at a loss for what to do, so I stepped in, as any parent would. Me, ma'am, would you mind leaving our dog alone? We are trying to enjoy the movie. Karen, don't mind me, just keep watching. Tony, I would like to pay attention to what's going on, but I cannot hear when you're talking. Karen, then just watch with your eyes instead. Tony just looked utterly confused and turned to me for advice. We were being shushed by other patrons of the theater, and it was truly impossible to have a good time with this woman interrupting us, so we decided to get up and leave. I could tell Athena was glad to get out of there, as she had seemed just as uncomfortable about the situation as we were. Tony was disappointed that we didn't get to stay and watch the movie, but I reassured him that we would reschedule and come back later in the week when we could fully enjoy ourselves. We were about ready to head out when we heard the door open to the theater behind us. We turned around and I saw that Karen had followed us out. She looked angry, which nearly made me laugh since we were the ones being followed and harassed, not her. Me, we were just leaving. Let's go, Tony. Karen, and just where do you think you're going? Me, home? We cannot have a good time out with you bothering us. Karen, I think it's you guys who are bothering me. What do you expect when you bring a dog to a public place like this? Me, she's a guide dog, not just a pet. She has every right to be here with us. It's not our fault if you cannot control yourself around an animal. And well, Ripe Stars, by the way, I have to say, I also cannot control myself around Disney, my cat. Whenever I see her, I just have to pet her. Guess I also have a lack of self-control. Anyway, Karen, I bet you're not even blind and you're just using it as an excuse to be able to bring your dog around with you. At that point, I had turned Tony around and began walking away from the woman, but she grabbed my son by the arm and ripped the cane out of his hand. He stumbled and fell to his knees, and I bent down to help him up as Athena nuzzled into his leg. Before I really knew what I was doing, I began shouting at her about how wrong it was to take things from people, especially mobility aids, and that it was inappropriate for her to claim that Tony was faking a disability when it didn't even affect her. She was yelling as well and began waving his cane around until she ended up hitting me in the side of the face with it. I stood stunned for a moment and then retaliated by hitting her in the chest, which caused her to fall to the ground. I think she even passed out for a moment. Employees of the theater approached and called up the authorities. It did not take much for them to see who was in the right, since there were witnesses in the theater who had overheard part of the argument. We found out that she hadn't even bought a ticket for the same movie as us and had instead followed us in. I of course pressed charges on her because it was too crazy for me to let it go like that. I don't have any updates on her charges as of yet, but Tony and Athena are doing well and have practically forgotten all about the incident. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.